test. Boofing. All right. And start the timer.
Yes. We're all professional here.
Feeling hot today. Not in a good way. I'm like hot.
Hot flashes?
Like I'm feeling sweaty. I've done a bunch of, maybe because I was exercising.
I, too, am a middle-aged woman. Anywho.
So you got through that, and you're here. I mean...
Yeah.
So we better get started.
We're late.
We are late.
And we're back.
Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages.
Are you going to start this?
What?
You should start that. There you go.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat.
I'm Mike.
And boy, do I have a show for you. Today on RMA, we wonder aloud about spreading ourselves too thin, falling victim to the people-pleasing psychopathy, and we wrap up our two-part series on Crime of the Century, the HBO documentary on the rise and fall of Perdu Pharma and the Sackler family's role in today's opioid crisis. All this and more today on a very special edition of RMA.
That was beautiful, man. That was quite an intro. That was
well, I had extra time this morning.
Yeah.
I had extra time.
Yes, you did.
Sitting, waiting
for Mike. That's story of my life. People are always waiting for me to show up.
I know, but I'm glad that you're here. We were ready to rock. I've got the outline printed out, and
here we go.
Boom.
In addition to listening to us here on the internet, you can also visit us on the internet at middleagesrecovery.com.
That's true.
Or at Podbean or Apple Podcasts, Facebook,
Intergram.
I want to start a company called Intergram.
Done.
Spotify, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. Join the discussion on our exclusive and private Facebook group. People are discussing things. If you need to talk, don't hesitate to reach out. Write us a review. New podcasts, and I still consider us a puppy of a podcast since we're less than a year old.
This is episode 40. I'd like to remind
40,
everyone.
holy crap.
40.
It feels like we've been doing this a very long time.
Doesn't it? But 40, that's at least an hour each, so we're talking a long time.
It has been a long time. Go to the Apple thing and click on the Drunk Monk and write us a review. The Apple Podcast app, which I can't stand.
Yeah.
But,
there's other apps.
There are. And you know what? I don't know if you listened to that episode of podcast, business podcast from the Wall Street Journal I sent you last week.
No, I didn't.
You should listen to that because there's Spotify is trying to steal everything away from Apple. But I don't know if there's a way on Spotify for you to rate a podcast. Is there?
I don't know.
I don't know either. So you guys should all go to the pre-existing standard in the industry, which is the Apple Podcast app, and leave us 5-star review. And in fact, we got one from...
The name is A Little Drunk, but hey is his name.
But I always read that Boothay. A Little Drunk Boothay. Boothay.
5 stars.
5 stars. Who's reading it?
Me.
Okay, go.
It says, and it's 5 stars, thank you very much. The title is Not in Recovery, but Love the Podcast, I think.
Mm-hmm. And then Love the Poo, it says.
Love the paw. You guys are totally relatable, and despite me not being in recovery, I can't stop listening. I love the stories and glimpses into your life. Good stuff.
You can't stop listening. Did you say you're addicted to our podcast?
Are you addicted? We're going to have an RMA-A.
There's a cure for that.
RMA-A groups where you discuss your obsession.
So we still have plenty of T-shirts available. You guys should maybe buy one. Are they too expensive? Just tell us on Facebook, and we'll not do anything.
I'm running a special right now. 20% off if you mention this podcast.
Yes. Use the code... Poverty. We'll
do it.
Middleagesrecovery.com. Go there, click the shopping cart. It's that easy to support your favorite show. And we also have the Your Story form there. So if you decide you don't want to leave a lengthy story on the podcast review app thing, you can go to the website and do it there, and we'll read it on the air, I promise. We've read pretty much all of them.
Mike, I have to say, you seem drained today.
Sorry, I just got off. You know what? Work has been very busy.
Work has been busy.
Yeah, it's it is what it is, man. You know,
it's a good. This is a good segue to ask you about work, because one of the outline bullets is all about your work, and your boss is calling you out. I mean, what's going on? What is going on?
I made a minor mistake when I was asking for $8 million. Or $9 million. I actually asked for $8. And
it's a lot.
The boss sort of saw that and was like, he didn't. He said, I did this and then I changed it because it hadn't been changed, and I know how to read between the lines. I know what that means.
Right.
And,
he took the liberty of correcting your error.
He took exactly. So it got me thinking that, now that everything's heating up in the legal community, all the courts are reopening, all the criminal trials are going forward, so the civil trials are following behind like an obedient puppy. Everything's happening at once, so it's really getting a little stressful. And when I relayed this to you a couple days ago, you had the greatest quote from Lord of the Rings, which is probably the nerdiest sentence I've ever said, ever. Why don't you tell the listeners what you said?
So this is the quote I think about. It's either from The Hobbit. This is when Bilbo Baggins is describing to Frodo how he feels since his life was unnaturally extended by the One Ring. And he says to Frodo, I feel thin, sort of stretched, like butter scraped across too much bread.
That was good. I should have jumped some music in the back of that.
Still can.
Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
But that's perfect.
I do. I feel like thin butter.
Just like scraped, and just like the feeling of the scraping with the knife across the toast, and it's just not making it, and you could feel the friction, like that feeling that,
Yeah, or like a needle being ripped across a turntable, a record.
Yeah, we have trouble saying no. I think.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, my wounds are all self-inflicted, right? Because there's the job, and there's the podcast, and then there's the other 95. Oh, well, and then there's
wife,
the family,
kids,
right? But then there's the other shit that I layer on top of all that.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, there's a lot of things that you want to do, just like me. There's so many things that I do want to do.
There's so many things.
I know.
I want to do all the things, which is different because I used to be afraid to do all the things. I was always half hungover, anxious, and I didn't want to, now if somebody calls me up and says, listen, let's go do this thing, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like Jim Carrey in that movie, right? What was
Yes
that movie?
Man.
The Yes Man, right?
It is.
That worked out for him in the end, or it didn't? I forget.
I think in the end, Jenny McCarthy left him.
Really?
But that happened in real life. I'm not sure if it was related to the movie.
My wife hates Jim Carrey, as an aside. Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a problem, but... then it got me thinking about the whole concept of balance and whether balance is overrated or whether it's important.
How could balance be overrated? I mean, you should have balance.
Well, what about going all in on your recovery?
Can't you
to the exclusion of some other things?
But you still should balance. Like, even if you go all in on your recovery for like 6 months and then back it off.
Well, what does that mean to go all in on your recovery, though?
7 meetings a week, reading constantly, speaking to a sponsor or a therapist. Really, like, almost every moment of your day is, you wake up and hit your knees, pray, like, do all
I was
of
like,
that
hit
stuff.
your knees with
That's
with an iron bar? Like, what are you talking about?
Going all in, calling 3 alcoholics a day to talk.
Yeah. Well, I've never done that, but, it's, right.
That's going all in.
Okay.
I mean, like, I had to do that for a while. To make this work. I was just explaining that to somebody on a Facebook group.
Yeah, and I was listening to some podcasts a couple of weeks ago where they said that if the first year of your sobriety you go all in on your recovery to the exclusion of all the other stuff, then that's an acceptable way to not have balance in your life.
Well, yeah, because
but if that continues indefinitely, then that's a problem.
It is,
and I agree with that.
And I think of it like if your house is on fire. What do you just run out of the house, or do you kind of like try and figure out why it started, who started it, and just kind of like sit? No, you get the fuck out of the house.
We'll grab the cat. I mean the dogs. Grab the cat.
But
I don't have a cat.
It's like triage. If it takes that first year, like my life was so messed up, my life was so out of whack, my brain was so upside down that it was 100% necessary for me in order to continue living. Essentially, I had to go all in.
Right.
I had
well,
to be on meds.
It's like treating an illness. If you have cancer, you're not going to be going skydiving probably.
Right.
Until the chemo wears off. But
so all in. But yes, but I think balance in the larger sense of the.
But I think this is different depending on what level of in active addiction you are, because I know there's a lot of people who have just a case of alcohol use disorder. Where they fall on that spectrum is not the end where they're sneaking under the stairs to drink vodka every 5 minutes.
They could all benefit from not drinking, but to the extent of what kind of treatment they need.
Right.
it's completely dependent upon that, I believe.
I've actually found myself committing more time to considerations about recovery as time goes on, because I find it to be a good use of my time, a therapeutic use of my time. You know what I mean?
Like it's a self-help thing. That's the way I see it.
I weave it in together with the meditation and with the other stuff. And it's just sort of becomes part of the fabric of your life, the tapestry, if you will.
Right, 100%. And I think that's where it has to be. To get to, when I was first in recovery or first being forced into it, the idea of staying sober or doing a program, it was the hardest thing I could imagine, because I would have to change my entire life in order to make it so that I could do it and be joyful, and it's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So for a long time, you have to do something you really don't want to do.
Right.
And people think, I don't want to do this, I shouldn't have to. Or if I don't have a warm feeling the minute I start something, then it's not for me. It's disabusing yourself of the notion that being uncomfortable is somehow bad for you. I mean, getting clean to begin with is extremely uncomfortable, especially if you're suffering from acute withdrawal or use disorder. So, it's hard to get somebody to a spot where they internalize that and say, yeah, maybe that's that spiritual awakening that they talk about, where you have that epiphany, like, wow, I've got to do a bunch of shit I don't think I want to do in order to get to the other side.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay. No, I agree with everything you said. I don't know. If, maybe that is worth it. I'm hesitating because I'm considering what you're saying.
Yes. I did say a lot in about 10 seconds.
Wait, I had a thought I was chasing down there though. Well, fuck it. Forget it.
Hey, we had Memorial Day this weekend.
Yeah, right. We did. It was great.
Yeah, and I'd like to say...
Well, actually, it wasn't great. It rained for 2 solid days, and it was like 45, 50 degrees.
Right. So we had this big Memorial Day. Everybody in America celebrates it, I believe.
What happened to the mic? You're unplugged.
And how did that happen?
I don't know.
This way.
You're a musician. Plug it in.
Sorry about that. You don't really celebrate Memorial Day, but it's supposed to be a somber day to remember the sacrifices so many of our military and the people who support the military have made. And, it made me think about my grandfather. I don't typically think of myself as being from a military family, because it's just not the way we roll. It wasn't part of the fabric of my childhood.
Right.
They never talked about it. My grandpa Henry never discussed his time in WW2, which is what he called it, until I asked him why one arm was shorter than the other. And he said, that's shrapnel. And
I thought you were setting up a joke.
No, there's no joke on this one.
Okay, sorry.
The punchline is shrapnel, so that's not actually funny. And so my grandfather, Grandpa Henry, he was a medic in World War II. And he later became a pharmacist, and he was, I guess, something blew him up, and he got the Purple Heart. But before he did, he devoted his life to it. He didn't die in active duty, so he died years later. But he definitely suffered the consequences of his injuries, and I'm sure the PTSD, which he would never talk about. Especially being a medic. Think about how many times he must have run onto the field to see
pieces of people all over the place.
But yeah, I honor him and my namesake, Nathaniel. I won't say. Now I'm giving my name away. There was someone I was named after who died in the Civil War on my father's side. And
was he? Do you know anything about him? Do you know which Army unit he was?
I could find. With? You can Google his name. You can see his grave. That'd be really
interesting.
You can see his grave and whatever company he was in.
Oh wow!
I can get all that stuff. And so there's some of that, and we like to honor those veterans who did pay the ultimate price to protect our way of life, so we can have these conversations.
Yeah, right? My Uncle Joe died in World War II. He was died in Guam fighting the Japanese.
Really?
Yeah.
So we got a couple.
Yeah, he was 19 years old.
Jesus.
When you think about that, and so many guys from that generation when they came back, the idea of sharing your experiences and all that sort of thing was and the idea of even of therapy as sort of like a normal thing that people do to get their heads in order, just wasn't there. So these guys just bottled it all down, and
you didn't
a lot of them ended up with alcohol abuse problems, and
you weren't getting therapy unless you were crazy, or so they thought.
Or I don't know if anybody watched the movie Patton, George C. Scott.
He's amazing.
The general, he had this one kid in the movie who had shell shock, and because he just couldn't take the bombs anymore, and Patton walks up to the kid and takes his gloves and his riding crop and starts smacking him in the face, going, "You're nothing but a damn coward." That shows you how different people were thinking about it.
That sounds like Synanon meetings.
Right.
But the rain did not ruin it, for me. Most, like, my family was annoyed, obviously, because we probably wanted to go and do some nice stuff. Mm-hmm. We actually had a trip planned. We went to the new Legoland that just opened up in Goshen, New York, which is about 2 hours north.
Orange County, I think.
And so we left Sunday. It was raining. And, we decided to spend the night at the hotel for Legoland. It was going to be nice, but they're not open yet. It was like a preview, so not everything was functioning.
Yikes.
And we stayed at this Holiday Inn Express. That was just a shit show. Holy shit. They didn't have anything together. Like, everything was wrong with this room, the service. Like, it couldn't have been worse. But we got through it. We brought the Roku and could watch TV, and we had a great day at Legoland. My kids are very into Legos, and everybody got along, and it was thank God for that.
Let me take a step back here for a minute. So, as a business traveler, I've stayed in my share of shitty hotels, in the country. What made this particular Holiday Inn Express less than a positive experience for your family?
So the first thing was, before we booked the room, we were told the pool was open. Even though, and this is actually the only reason Christine booked it, is because the kids would love to go swimming in.
That is like a fatal fucking mistake for them to make.
Pool was closed. So we got there and we're like, this is and then we tried to talk to the manager about, like, why did you tell, what the hell? Like, can we get a discount? Not only did they not care, the person who could have made any decisions didn't show up till the next day. On top of it, just things you expect in a hotel, like Wi-Fi that works. We usually bring our Rokus and the kids can watch their streaming. The Wi-Fi was terrible. Not only that, the shower had no pressure. And keep in mind, this is a new-looking Holiday Inn Express. It just looked like a shitty movie set kind of thing. Like, it was just put up in 10 minutes. The refrigerator was like like all night long.
Well, every time you get one of those hotels, it's never one thing that's fucked up. It's like everything is fucked up.
And the final thing I'll mention is that my son Max, who's constantly hurting himself, he needed a Band-Aid, or he needed bacitracin, and we couldn't find it in our bag. And so I go, oh, don't worry, I'll go down. Hotels always have a little toiletry area with Band-Aids, and absolutely not. They just had lean cuisine and Pringles,
and they didn't even have a Band-Aid behind the front desk.
He didn't have anything.
Amazing. And so the Holiday Inn Express in Goshen can go fuck itself.
Go fuck itself.
Don't stay there. 1 star.
Yeah.
What else happened this week? We had a scout meeting.
Yeah. So tell us about the scout meeting with. Is he a county legislator?
He's a county legislator. He's a bit of a enfant terrible, to borrow the French term. He's a young guy.
27.
He's 27 now, but he got his first elected office when he was 18. He was elected to the school board in the ritzy town next to ours, who has had all kinds of, issues with, any of you that don't live in New York would be horrified to know what the average person pays in property taxes around here. But I don't know. So he was elected to that office, and I interviewed him for a podcast that I used to have about local goings-on around town, and we kept in touch ever since. So I managed to...
I'm sorry I never came on that podcast, by the way. I know you invited me, and I wanted to, but it just never materialized.
It's never too late, because elections are coming up, and now I want to become a power broker in town.
You should. Yeah.
I'm going to start it up again.
Media mogul.
But anyway, so we kept in touch, and I, every once in a while, jack him for a favor, like
Jack him.
Well, you know what I mean. Like,
the latch
not
greased?
off, but he, for example, my son got an internship with him this summer, which is going to be a ridiculous because my son is like a right-wing commando now.
Yeah.
And
maybe he'll learn
he's
something.
like he goes to Black Lives Matter rallies and stuff. So it's really,
and Josh went to Harvard too.
he did. He did. But anyway, so he came and spoke to the Cub Scouts, and that was great. We had a nice meeting. We went on a nice hike afterwards.
I was just so our listeners know. So I'm actually supposed to be like the equal partner to Mike. When we first
I include you on all the text messages.
Which is as far as, and I feel awful about it because early on you were kind of like, listen, I don't want to do this unless you do this with me. We had to both be, the den leaders. And I said yes because I don't know how to say no. And I wanted to make you happy.
That's how I ended up with it too.
Right. So the two of us. And it's just has not been on the top of, I think, either of our lists. But still, you still manage to put this together.
Every once in a while, I can pull a rabbit out of a hat. But you know what made me feel better? There was we invited a couple other dens, so there was another leader there, and I was talking to that guy, and he was like, "We didn't do anything this year either." And I was like, "Whew, that's a relief." I thought I was the only.
Kids had great questions. I felt like our kids looked so stupid.
Yeah,
and the other kids were like, asking complicated questions about like alternative sources of energy.
Yeah, these like 10-year-olds are like, "Where do you see the United States energy future in the next few years?" And he's like, "Well, I just make laws about like littering, but
Where did they
I'll do my best to answer,
Yeah, that was pretty funny. But thank you. Do you harbor any resentments that I've sort of abandoned you in some senses, or all?
Not really. I do have a job for you though.
Okay. Yeah, I want to be told what to do.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'll tell you right now on the air.
Okay.
I need 5 knives with the kids' names engraved in them and a Cub Scout emblem.
Okay.
By the June 22nd. So get started.
I think I could do that. So long as I remember after the show.
Yeah, I'll remind you. Don't worry.
We're giving.
So do you think we should give the kids knives, by the way? I mean, some of them, yes, but there's a couple that I'm thinking maybe shouldn't have knives.
Well, the ones you're thinking about probably already have knives and a gun, and that one kid probably has like a butterfly knife, and he's like, "Hey,
that one kid's going to be in prison in a few years."
Yeah,
but, you hate to look at somebody and be like, "I know the trajectory that kid's on," but Jesus, Anyway,
I wanted to say something about. I've been seeing there's some interesting things going on with people being bribed to get vaccinations. Is this part of your story for Recovery in the News?
It is. I'm
seeing a lot of these anyway, but so that's Recovery in the News. I'm seeing a lot of interesting.
Oh wait, a little early. Sorry.
Ways that they're trying to coerce people, And the other thing I wanted to note was I saw this Budweiser commercial where they're basically saying like, okay, everybody get back to the bar. Not only is it coming back, but everybody's getting a free Budweiser.
That is Recovery in the News this week.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
I've said it. All right.
What else you got?
What else do I have? So you here's this New York Times story I wanted to mention that it's very important, and the title is U.S. finds no evidence of alien technology in flying objects, but can't rule it out either. A new report concedes that much about the observed phenomena remains difficult to explain, including their acceleration as well as ability to change direction and submerge. Washington. I'm going to read a little bit because this is important.
This is so out of order.
This is the New York Times.
Okay.
American intelligence officials have found no evidence that aerial phenomena witnessed by Navy pilots in recent years are alien spacecraft, but they still cannot explain the unusual movements that have mystified scientists and the military, according to senior administration officials briefed on the findings of a highly anticipated government report. Okay, for one thing, there are government officials being briefed on the subject of what are these
But they're always
objects.
This is just kind of leaking out into the public domain now.
Okay.
Don't you think?
I wanted to call everyone's attention to that because you know how
you heard
how
it here
I feel
first.
about this stuff.
On this recovery podcast.
Yeah, sorry we're out of order today, but you
haven't been drinking, have you?
Not yet. No. What I have been doing is, and the last thing we're going to say before we get to the topic, I think, is I've been going to the gym. I've actually been able to get there this past week. I've made time for it, and I've been running. I finally hit 3.11 miles.
That is super, man. I'm trying to talk you into doing a race in the fall.
Yeah.
I threw the half marathon at you and you were like, fuck no.
Like, I mean, it felt good. I mean, I feel good. I'm feeling better shape than ever. And when I ran the 3 miles, which was my goal, is to get to I've been running 1.3 and 2 and so yeah, there's a big race coming up in a town nearby. What is it? September
21st, the Cow Harbor 10K.
10K.
If you want to find us, that's where we'll be.
10K is twice what I ran yesterday. So theoretically, I could work up to it, and I think I'm going to officially accept the challenge.
How long did it take you to get to where you are now?
I don't know. When did I start
running? Month and a half?
Was that what it was?
And you got 3 months to the race?
Yeah.
I like the math.
If I keep running like this,
I think you can do it. I think you should accept the challenge, and I think we should do it as a podcast. I think we should wear our own swag while we're doing it.
That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
And there is more swag coming. Jeff D, our merchandiser extraordinaire, is working on a new design.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we're very excited about that.
So did you have any buyer's remorse about the gym?
Yeah. So, I sort of, like many things in my life, impulse signed up for the gym. Now, what do I mean by that? I've been thinking about going to the gym, these past 3 months when I've been diet crazy and I've been doing 250 push-ups a day. And I finally was like, I'm hitting a wall. I can't get any more fit unless I join a gym, which probably isn't true, but I needed to go. So I made an appointment at this fancy gym nearby. And they showed me around, and I was so impressed, and I just signed up right there.
Wow!
I just signed up.
They reeled you right in.
They're like, you get 3 months free, and I'm like, oh, sweet. Meanwhile, I don't even know how long the contract is.
I was going to say, is it a contract or is it a month to month?
I don't even know. I just was like, I want to be a part of you.
Just sign here. Give me your money.
I know.
Wow. So you're going to start taking like the yoga and the stuff? Okay.
I've already, in fact, it comes with this awesome app that has like classes on demand. Even if you're not at the gym, I did a meditation. Oh. They have guided meditation. I did some yoga. I put it on my TV with their app. On top of it,
you didn't happen to film any of that, did you?
No. It was actually awful. I mean, I fell and
yoga is.
I can't sit on my feet and knees like that, and it's just crazy. But I am getting the most out of it, and I'm feeling good, and I'm,
Super.
But I am sort of regretting it. But the way I'm making up for that is by trying to get there as often as I can.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still stuck in the garage because I got the squat rack. I called you yesterday when I was working out.
So
too.
Mike calls me, and all of a sudden I hear, I'm like, Mike, is everything okay? Yeah. And
listen, I'm an old man, and I'm listening.
7, 8. I'm like, hello? 9. And I told you doing squats at our advanced age is a horrible idea. But
light weights because I got to keep myself fit.
So look, both of us are staying in shape, and we encourage everybody out there to start an exercise regimen.
It really makes a difference in your mental outlook because it fires off all these great endorphins inside your brain, and it's good for you.
I mean,
don't listen to that, but it feels good. That's why you should do it. It feels
great, and it took me the longest time, even though I knew exercising was going to get me to that next level of being happy.
Yes.
Until I finally was like, fuck this, I'm just going to fucking run.
Yeah.
And I did. And that's what's cool about
Forrest.
running. I bought these sneakers that you told me to buy.
We can see them.
And I just was like, you know what, honey, I'm going for a run. That was it. I didn't have to drive to a gym. I just said, I'm out of here. I didn't know.
3 years later, they found that in a small city in the Midwest.
Run. So I also have some sad news today. My old trumpet teacher passed away recently, and I know that doesn't sound like it's an important person when I say it that way, but he was part of my family. His name is Peter Trenchy, and maybe one thing people might not know about me is that I was like a prodigy trumpet player. When I was in 4th grade, I was widely seen as the best trumpet player in town. I played in this whole I played taps I was asked And I performed taps at Teddy Roosevelt's grave on his birthday with all the dignitaries. I was first trumpet when I was in 9th grade. They put me right at first trumpet with the seniors. Like, I was the best trumpet, and he was the reason.
Right.
And he didn't have much of a family himself. He had a very tragic family story. His brother died of AIDS in the 80s. His older brother died of alcoholism. He was a pretty bad alcoholic as long as I knew him.
Like through his life?
Yeah.
Like he didn't stop?
He never stopped.
Okay.
And
how old was he?
He died at 66.
That's pretty young from where I'm sitting.
Well, the story goes that as much as I could tell, he ended up with 3 DWIs. And for the last one, he had to do 6 months in a county lockup.
Jesus. Did he kill somebody?
No, but he was so if you do this in New York and continue to violate,
right?
Like he kept going to these rehabs, and then you're supposed to stop drinking, and then he would graduate the rehab. We almost crossed paths too at one of our rehabs recently, which is interesting. And we did talk about alcoholism. It was awkward for me because he was always inviting me out, like drunk dialing me. You got a cup? I'm like, Mr. Trenchy. He's like, call me Peter. And
Jesus.
Even after he would, have the DWI, case, and it was over, he'd still meet up for drinks.
Right.
He lost a marriage over alcohol. He never had any kids.
Do you think he had the clarity of mind to see that his life had gone sideways because of drinking?
The last conversation I had with him after he got out of jail, we met up at Wally World, as he called it, in the neighboring town. And and
that
he called
place.
He called it Wally World.
That food is terrible.
And I was really trying to, like maybe I could tell him, hey, my life is getting so much better because I don't drink. So I admitted to him that I had a DWI and that I was struggling with alcohol, hoping that I could say, hey, what about you? You're going to go to a meeting, or you're going to try? And he was, even after all of that, even after jail, even after ruining his life, essentially, he still was not convinced that he was an alcoholic.
That's amazing, the capability we have for self-deception.
It's so sad because we did love him, and sorry to see him go. He was one of the best trumpet teachers, and a lot of the trumpet players are who are professionals now, can call him their coach and their teacher. And he did pass away of cancer ultimately, and he will be missed.
I think you really it's very sad, and it's exceptionally sad when somebody who has such obvious talent in some area is unable to get around the drink. But it also kind of puts to mind something that really is kind of out in front of us at all times, especially doing this podcast, is that when you get to the Middle Ages or older, your ways of thinking about things are pretty ingrained, and to sort of pull back to get the 50,000 foot view and try and see things in a whole rather than from your little incorrect position inside your own head is very difficult. And I think it gets really difficult when you get older because
you get set in your ways.
Not only that, but if you really were to be honest with yourself and pull back and take a look at how much time was wasted and how much, potential, the things that could have been that never came to be, it makes it extremely difficult, I think, for you to say, you know what, I've been on the wrong path, I'm going to take a turn.
Right. Because it's an admission of futility, or it's a mission of, when I think about lost opportunities
But the thing is, it's never too late, though. Even if you're, because
I graduated at 42.
Well, and I've read, stories from on the internet and some groups I belong to from people who quit drinking at the age of 60 or the age of 65. And you can't get like all wrapped up in the idea like, the last 20 years were a waste. It's like, here I am now, and these are like the best years of my life all of a sudden. And I'm actually taking this time and I'm spending it in a productive and a positive way.
Right.
So for any of you out there who are on the older end of the middle age spectrum,
what do I have to gain? I don't have much left.
It's like you have so much to gain, and don't ever give up. Don't surrender. Don't throw in the towel.
Even if
be willing to take a look at yourself and do the work that needs to be done.
Even if it's true and you're dying next week, why not give yourself 4 days of clarity?
Right.
It's that's one of those things.
I just, it's hard not to look at life and time in like a linear fashion and cut it up into little pieces and think like this part was good, this part wasn't good. I mean, you learn lessons from all parts, all the good parts, all the bad parts, all the weird parts. And then some of the stuff that you think is horrible when you're going through it, when you look back on it 20 years later, you think how necessary that was for your development. Not to be overly philosophical about it, but
to cap that off, it makes me think of something a speaker I was listening to an AA or NA speaker tape, and the speaker said to the people, "If I could take away your addiction and your history getting to this place, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't cure you. I wouldn't want to rob you of the journey."
Right.
Because so much of the joy that I have in my life and that you have maybe wouldn't be here had we not gone through all of these horrible things, even though I'm still, having problems like when I'm driving and I have these flashbacks from my accidents, and sometimes I'm just sitting there, outside with my kids, and I'll remember some scenario where I was nearly killed or robbed or woke up to find myself somewhere where I didn't know. Like those are, that is really hard, but I wouldn't have the rest of my joy had I not gone through all of that. Or I don't know if I would, but I couldn't guarantee it,
It's all part of the tapestry of your life.
So I wouldn't change it. I really wouldn't change it.
Just to borrow from the Zen, the Buddhism thing, you can look at it and you don't have to get attached to feeling a certain way about it.
It's hard to not regret things because I regret so much with the way it hurt my kids and my wife and my family. And I wish I could undo that, because I feel awful about that. But we can't think like that. We can't.
Yesterday's history.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's a mystery.
So,
blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Ending all of that, now it is time.
Let's talk about drugs.
For the main topic discussion. Part 2 of Crime of the Century.
Called What's in It for Me?
Right. With him.
What?
With him.
Oh, yeah. That's what that salesman was saying, right?
Right.
So part 2 is really takes a look at how the corporate greed situation around the opiate crisis didn't really change. It just kind of was taken up by different companies who were trying to dip their beak and take advantage of people. This particular part of the show focused on the legacy of a company called Insys.
Insys.
Not incest. Insys, which is another company that forced its play into the business of mainstreaming opioids. It was spearheaded by an entrepreneur named John Kapoor.
Yeah, I have a clip for this. Can I play a clip?
Yeah, sure.
Right. This is with him. Let's see if it works.
Reds are your businessmen. They own their practice. They run their practice. They manage their books. They see a crazy number of patients. It's all about efficiency. In fact, when you as the rep walk in there, they run to you with a pen to sign, and they're running away.
He's talking about selling to doctors.
They don't have time to talk with you because they're treating patients making money. And if he's a red and he's a businessman, I got to show him the WIFM. What is the WIFM? WIFM. What's in it for me? That's all they're thinking. What's in it for me? Buddy, will you stop talking about the freaking drug? Will you stop talking about saving the patient? Will you stop talking about the science? And will you please tell me what's in it for me? Because you're wasting my time. Those are the Reds. Those are the...
So that was Kapoor's former VP of sales, Alex Burlakoff.
I should have set that up a little bit better. That's when they're talking about how to sell to doctors, that there's 4 different kinds of doctors, red, yellow, and red is the one that is just with them.
So Insys product was fentanyl. And it was sublingual fentanyl that you'd spray under your tongue, and it was also the lollipop. Right? So, again, Insys had the same idea that they had to overcome the doctor's resistance to prescribing the opiates.
Right.
But their take was to go out and look for the sleaziest doctors and, work them as hard as they could, like take them out to strip clubs,
right,
buy them dinners and everything.
And that's just what that guy was talking about,
But, there's some doctors that you weren't going to be able, like if you couldn't show certain doctors scientific evidence that this stuff was, specifically geared and would help the pain, wasn't addictive, they didn't want to have anything to do with you. But there were other doctors who were like, he's like the ones that they specifically targeted were the ones that were businessmen first and doctors second, and they could see that how much money that could be made the more they wrote these prescriptions. But this company was particularly shady because they would pay the doctors, like literally just write them checks for like speaking fees, they call them.
That's how they would bribe them.
Yeah, and they would say, Doc, here's an honorarium, I think they called it, a speaking honorarium. But they made it specifically clear that if they paid the doctor like $3,000, the doctor better write $6,000 worth of opioid prescriptions.
Right. So they found a way, in. And sadly, it wasn't as difficult, I think, as maybe some people thought it would be to get to doctors. They're supposed to be priest-like.
All of a sudden, the idea of pain, was changed. You saw
the fifth vital.
Yeah, you saw the fifth vital sign. It was called by these pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. So that's where you first saw the scale of pain from 1 to a 10, with the happy face being 1 and the face in agony being 10.
I always circled the one with agony to try and get pills.
That's how you get pills, right?
Pills.
But so the combination of the marketing by Insys and other companies like that, and these doctors who were just in it for the money, resulted in all of these pain management clinics popping up. A lot of them in the state of Florida, which is kind of what they focused on in the movie. But these places were pretty remarkable. I mean, you'd go in and a doctor would see you for like 10 seconds and be like, how you feeling? Is anything hurt? And then they'd send you out with a script for fentanyl. I mean, it was nuts. And so people would line up around the block these places in the morning. I don't have any experience with this because I never was addicted to opiates.
I always wished I could find one. I heard about these things when this was going on. I was probably in the depths of my opioid addiction, and I remember thinking like, oh, I gotta fucking find one of these places. Like, how come I don't know where these places are? You know what I mean? But it's amazing because just watching this documentary, and I read the book Empire of Pain, just seeing what all the pieces of this puzzle are, and it's all kind of becoming clear. It's not just the Sacklers making the drugs. I mean, like, doctors were complicit, and then a sales force was complicit, and then a pharmacy was complicit, and then you've got the business end of the recovery industry on the other side of it,
and then Congress was complicit ultimately, right?
I mean, this is, you can't just blame the Sacklers, man. I mean, this is a series of just bad actors just screwing everybody for money, basically.
I mean, these sales guys were really something, though. Like that Burkhoff guy, he went out and he recruited other people to work for Insys. And where did he find his best Mid-Atlantic regional sales manager? She was a stripper.
She was, because he said she knows how to sell.
Right, knows how to work a room, and she ended up running a whole bunch of other people. And
that guy is brilliant. Like, you just listen to, I mean, sleazy as hell.
He's from Long Island, too.
You could tell. But, I mean, those guys were brilliant. But guess what? They were just doing their job. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the problem was that they started bending the law. And he got started, actually, I think, working for Prozac. Early on, or was it? He got fired.
Burkhoff, that sales guy? Yeah.
And
he was a
fired.
former gym teacher who then got into pharmaceutical sales because he realized, he said he showed up at the parking lot of the school that he taught at, and there was some guy in a Porsche smoking a cigar. And when he told the guy there was no smoking there, the guy blew smoke in his face and said, "Little rules for little people." And he was like, at that moment, he decided he had to go out there and make some money. And ethics were not really at the top of his,
And so even after his first job, he was fired from that because of, like, he was inappropriately, I think, paying doctors, or they found out he was giving away too many free samples or something. Mm-hmm. But he immediately found the next company and said, well, I know I can make money doing that, and just kind of took it to the next level with bribing of the the bribing of, sorry, that's my ring, the bribing of doctors. And, but I think they all knew about it. Like in his first instance, they fired him over it. But from there on, from what was it, Insys and Perdu, and they just sort of said, yeah, they looked the other way. We're making money.
Right.
What's in it for me?
Well, it was crazy to me to hear exactly how deep Florida got into the whole thing. I don't know if it's because of a lax regulatory environment or whatever, but it became the epicenter of the prescription drug abuse epidemic. The Broward County Sheriff's Department 30 years ago, it was all crack houses. That's what they were focusing their enforcement on. And now they're just raiding pill mills, which are, the stores, like I mentioned earlier, where you just, they would just prescribe pick pills. It was basically just drug dealing with a prescription pad.
It would be all cash. They highlighted a couple of doctors who were singled out for particularly egregious violations of basic, prescribing morals.
Just one stat about Florida, though, that blew my mind is that doctors in Florida prescribe 10 times more oxycodone than pills than every other state in the country combined. People were coming from all over the Southeast to visit the pain clinics.
It's
Florida,
crazy.
man.
and then, and then what they're saying is, how did the people who monitor these things not notice that a small pharmacy in some small town was prescribing more opiates to their population than, like a major city? Like something was clearly going on there.
The crazy thing is these were like the pain pills some of them had the pharmacy in-house. So you would get the prescription and then you'd walk down the hall and they would fill it down the hall.
Yeah.
So those guys were making money on both ends.
Yep.
But there was other clinics where you just get the prescription and then you'd have to go fill it. So word gets out that this one CVS near the highway, you could line up there in the morning. There was like a line of 50 people deep, just like you'd see like on the Lower East Side, like on Avenue D in the 80s when people were buying heroin, and just line up. And the CVS, when they interviewed the sheriff's office interviewed them after a bust, they asked them, well, why did you cut off everybody waiting online at noon?
Right. And
she said, well, we wanted to have some pain pills left for our legitimate patients who actually had pain.
Right. So it's like they knew that this was not legitimate.
This is CVS. This isn't like some crappy little, just absolutely unbelievable. But you were going to talk about some of these doctors, and I think there's that one guy who was running that clinic out in Utah who was they talked about him at the end of the first episode. What was his name again?
Was that Lynn Webster?
Lynn Webster.
He's an interesting character because
Psychopath.
He was they made him into a big criminal, which maybe he was. But what's interesting about him is he really appeared to not believe he was doing anything wrong. Like if you watch the interviews with him, he looks very intellectually honest in that he felt he was doing the right thing by his patients. And what's crazy is when any other doctor would look at the prescriptions he was giving to his patients, it was like 100 times over the normal recommended dosages. He would have patients if
you'd have them on like 5 or 6 different opiates.
So it would be like 1,000 milligrams a day instead of 20. And
do you think he really believed his own shtick?
He, from what I've seen, and I'm a decent judge of people lying, but who knows? He appeared to me that he really believed he was helping. He does admit, look, there were a couple of cases that he says where I was
like
taking
30 patients who dropped dead.
He was like, there's a few cases that I regret not noticing that they were taking advantage of me and they died, and I regret that. But he doesn't take any responsibility. He says, he was doing what he believed was the right thing for those patients. He believed truly in high-dose, pure opioid pain management. And he felt like this was an attack on pain patients. And so, I don't know. It's an interesting point of view. And maybe it's true. Maybe it is helpful to prescribe as much opioids as a person needs. I don't know.
I tend
I'm not
to
a
think
doctor.
not.
It doesn't seem to have gone that way historically, but he seems to think so.
I mean, when do we get this idea in society that every pain that we have needs to be addressed with a pill or something? You know, I mean, pain is the body's way of telling you that, you know, something is going on.
That's what we were just talking about this morning. You know, the fact that, you know, being uncomfortable isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that something is wrong. Your body is telling you that you're in pain, you know, and it's your job to react to that and manage it. And maybe it means, you know, don't walk on your right leg for an hour or two because it's got pain. So if you're constantly numbing that pain, you're not taking care of your body.
But these drug companies have changed the discussion in America to the point where, you know, they have made it pain out to be something that must be eradicated at all costs. So now that's sort of seeped into the popular imagination, you know?
Right. Nobody wants to be, you know, and when I was in rehabs, I would always hear when addicts were reasoning with, you know, the doctor or the therapist about why they needed to take, you know, their heroin. It would be like one guy who was always like, oh, I got in a car accident, you know, 10, 15 years ago. And if I don't take it, I can't get up in the morning. And, you know, and maybe that's true now. But, you know, once these people get off of the abuse cycle, usually their pain does subside. And it turns out that the taking of all of these opioids to cover up the pain is actually, you know, making it worse, really.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the percentage of people who started out taking oxys for back pain and ended up scoring heroin in an alley because they became addicted to it. I mean, these are criminals. These are criminal doctors. These are criminal pharmacists. You know, I mean, it's why more of these people are not in jail. I do not understand. Well, I do understand. I understand because the drug companies have plenty of money and plenty of pull on Capitol Hill.
Well, that's the thing. They've got people in office. They've got people at the FDA. They're giving money to politicians supporting campaigns. I mean,
well, they in the documentary they interviewed this one DEA agent whose mission was, for his entire career until it was basically ended by the pharmaceutical industry, was to try and interrupt the supply chain of these pills by going after the manufacturers were shipping from the warehouse, because there's apparently a federal statute that says, I forget what the language is exactly, but if you can show that there's a danger that these pills are going to end up going to an abuse situation rather than for a legitimate medical reason, the FDA can raid the distributor and shut it down. And that's what they were doing, and they were doing it successfully. But then companies like Perdu and Insys got into the ear of the representatives in Congress, and one guy who used to work at the DEA actually went to work for a law firm after his career at the DEA was over, and he became the company's biggest advocate on Capitol Hill, and he actually ended up rewriting that law, taking the enforcement power away from the DEA so they could no longer raid these companies. Unless you think this is an issue of Republicans versus Democrats, the thing sailed through Congress with bipartisan support, and not a single negative vote, and Obama just signed it right into law. So it basically defanged the DEA and stopped them from being able to go after these companies.
Right.
And that's all money in politics and power.
So every step of the way, when there was supposed to be something, you know, that society placed, breaks, stops, where checks, all of it seemed to have fallen through. I mean, usually when you have this many things, like there should have been the DEA, there should have been, you know, pharmacies, there should have been the drug companies looking at it, and everybody, and even the people who were like selling it, the people working at these companies, like nobody, you know, stopped this, and the people who did were probably like,
they all knew what was going on.
It's a failure, a major failure of basic, you know, dignity at the expense of just greed. It's unbelievable. I mean, it is believable. That's why it's sad. But now we have a situation where all of they backed off quite a bit on producing I think OxyContin has been discontinued, but there's a million other opioid pills. And so many of the people who were hooked then went to heroin or fentanyl and then died. And they are responsible for those deaths. That's what I believe.
100%.
Those motherfuckers are responsible.
They should be in jail, all of them.
I mean, it's a miracle I'm not dead. I mean, for a number of reasons. And I don't blame Perdu for my opioid addiction because...
You should.
Well, I'm not one of those guys. And I used to say that I used to like the idea that I could hide behind that because so many people, when I was first coming out about my opioid addiction, I would hear people sort of make excuses for me and say, oh, well, you probably were prescribed it. And, you know,
Okay, so you're not one of those.
The truth is I can't blame them because what really happened was I was trying to get pills.
Right.
And when the guy the next day came back with supposed to be my Percocet, he had 2 bags of heroin. He said, this is all I could get. I said, what's that? He said, heroin. Oh, no, he actually said dope. And I did it. So this was not me, and I was not addicted at the time. I was 100% in my quote-unquote right mind.
Right.
And I still did it.
Well, okay.
So not everybody gets that excuse. Like, I was just truly a drug-seeking addict. As hard as that is to say.
Another way to think about that, though, is maybe there wouldn't be quite so much heroin around if the Mexican cartels hadn't realized that all these people who can't get pills are looking to, sustain their opioid addiction. So there's way more heroin around than there would have been if Perdu Pharma hadn't gotten all these people hooked on opiates. So so maybe your dealer wouldn't have had any heroin to give you. So maybe you can blame the pharmaceutical company.
I mean, it's great. It's nice to blame, but
it is.
The truth of the matter is, like anything, there's many different things that failed, many reasons. So what's great about this book and these movies, these documentaries, is it's at least shining a light on like what the hell happened, and just to look back on it and, hopefully it's like the reason you study history is so you don't repeat the bad parts of it, right?
Except
Isn't that why we
in
study
America,
history?
as long as the people who are selling the product get access to the people who write the laws, I don't see this ever changing.
Right. I mean, lobbyists are a big problem, and
because it's opioids today, and then what is it tomorrow? Now, what new drug is it going to be tomorrow?
There's a quote from there's a radio personality who you're going to not want to hear from. His name is Michael Savage. Is the Savage Nation. He's an extreme right winger, but he had a very poignant comment. I used to listen to him. He was talking about the government and lobbyists, and he said, our government is run by lobbyists and politicians. A lobbyist is a bribe giver. Mm-hmm. What does that make a politician? Right. A bribe taker.
Yes.
Therefore, our government is run by bribe takers. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't have put it better myself. And I don't know what we can do about that except for abolish the dollar and go back to the barter system.
Maybe we could do what China does, and if you screw up something like this, you take the executive, you put them against the wall, and you shoot them. That would be
right.
Maybe that
Duterte shooting drug dealers. You think that's
the problem with Duterte is he goes against the users, which
he shoots the users.
He shoots the users too.
That's
not that I'm like a big death penalty advocate, but you take out the heads of some of the big pharmaceutical companies. Maybe don't put them against the wall. Maybe put them in jail for 20 years. Yeah, but we don't put people in jail for crimes like that, despite the fact that how many tens of thousands of people have died, hundreds of thousands.
You go to jail for having an ounce of marijuana in your wheel well or something.
Yeah,
the real criminals.
Because so many of these people, right? These are guys with regular jobs who twisted their neck, and then 5 years later, they're buying heroin in an alley, and
they weren't all degenerate addicts.
And meanwhile, what's recovery's answer to these people? Get them in a room and make them talk about how bad their choices were. Which fuck that shit. Honestly,
Yeah. What I don't remember exactly. The resolution of this documentary.
Well, I don't want to give away the ending, mostly because I didn't watch it till the end.
I think
I know what's his name went to jail. The incest guy.
He did.
But it was for fraud, some kind of fraud.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is go watch this documentary. I also highly recommend to read the book by Patrick Radden Keefe, which is long but extremely comprehensive. And if you want to get the Audible, he's got a great reading voice.
But you should buy the hardcover because we get paid if you do that.
Yeah, please go to our link and get that.
I don't think
book.
we get paid on the Audibles, do we?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It depends on the Audible. But
when I say get paid, I mean
like 5 cents,
like 10 cents or something. So yeah,
But what I would like from our audience is if I would like to hear your review of these documentaries or your thoughts on it. Go to our private Facebook group for Recovery in the Middle Ages. Join the discussion and tell us what you think. Go watch it, read it, and let's talk about it. This is going to be our book club. I'm thinking about doing a book club for our where we all read a book, maybe discuss it on the show and discuss it in a group.
Yeah, man.
We're trying to do more interactive stuff. I don't know. Do we have anything more we want to say about Crime of the Century, an HBO documentary?
No, I don't know. You just put me on the spot. I'm trying to think.
So,
yeah. No, I guess it's not really true. Fentanyl is interesting. Like the fact that Insys was they're pushing all this fentanyl.
Yeah. Those fentanyl
how did they get to
lollipops.
fentanyl from oxys?
The story behind fentanyl is it's been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors loved it because you could get so much efficacy out of such small doses.
Right.
So it was used in hospitals for anesthesiologists and stuff. So fentanyl was around, and it wasn't the big thing it is now once they started substituting heroin.
It was like end of life cancer pain.
Yeah, it was a very effective synthetic
medication.
opioid that it was great. And so it sort of was a natural progression of like, if we want a lot of efficacy from this small lollipop, we use fentanyl and it'll be great, And then unfortunately what happened is people got access to manufactured fentanyl, cheap fentanyl. So they were able to, first they were mixing it with the heroin because heroin's very expensive. I mean, it's got to be grown. It has to be farmed.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing. And once fentanyl came, it was just like, boom, you could buy like, what was it? Like an ounce for $300.
Well,
and turn it around for $150.
It's also much easier to smuggle. So the Mexican cartels have almost switched over almost completely to just fentanyl. Like nobody makes heroin anymore. They just make fentanyl. And even the cocaine traffic has dropped because cocaine is harder to package and ship than fentanyl because you can get more bang for your buck out of the fentanyl. So the Chinese are making it and the Mexicans are making it. And it's just coming into the U.S. because our big companies and our politicians have banded together to create a nation of drug addicts.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say, just from personal experience, after I OD'd, and I was tested by my probation officer, I tested negative for heroin, negative, positive for fentanyl.
Really?
Interesting. So even though I wasn't outwardly saying, I'd like to buy fentanyl, I was trying to get the other stuff, and there was nothing in it. So
it's in everything now, right?
Yeah, cocaine too. I used to run into guys in rehab that once they got to rehab, 3 days later, they started having opioid withdrawals and they couldn't understand it because they were cocaine addicts. They're like, why am I? They didn't get it.
Right.
And then when they tested them, they're like, no, you've got,
It seems like a weird thing to put in cocaine.
It doesn't make sense. But these people are not operating on a lot of logic. It's just sort of, So having said all of that, that is the end of our part 2 of Crime of the Century.
Yeah.
And we will be right back after these words. And you didn't have to go to the bathroom.
No. I just got a notification on my phone that my dog's drugs are coming.
Oh, sweet.
I ordered, my little white dog?
Yeah.
It's very neurotic.
Yeah.
I ordered her these CBD chews.
You got your dog CBD.
I'm going to get my dog high. I suspect it's probably all snake oil, but I want to see if it works because she's very annoying when she gets in a mood.
People swear by CBD. I mean,
it doesn't do anything.
Doesn't do much for me, but you got to get those placebos can really get you. All right.
Okay.
What time is it?
It's time for our recovery in the news. It's the happiest part of the show. So this week on Recovery in the News, we take a trip back to the old gray lady, the New York Times, who had a story yesterday whose headline was Anheuser-Busch to give away free beer when the U.S. hits Biden's July 4th vaccination goal. I believe you dropped this story earlier in our show today.
Sorry.
The brewing giant Anheuser-Busch said on Wednesday that it would offer Americans another incentive to get vaccinated, free beer. The company said in a statement that it would buy America's next round of beer, seltzer or non-alcoholic beverage, once the country reached President Biden's goal of having 70% of the adult population get at least one coronavirus vaccination by July 4th. We're at 63% right now.
Wow.
So even though it says that they will give you a $5 virtual credit card to order
I can get a seltzer?
beverage of your choice, in order to get the card, you have to take a picture of yourself at the location where you enjoy your beer.
Really?
Yes.
This is very interesting.
So,
Yeah. So, I mean, we must be very desperate to, two things we're desperate for: to kickstart the bar and beer industry and get people vaccinated. So we're just combining those two things. I think it's brilliant.
The pace of vaccinations in the United States has slowed, with the biggest gains in recent week made in vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds who are not eligible for free beer.
No. So what do they get?
They get, I don't know what they get.
They get a hard seltzer instead of a beer?
Yes. Jim Justice, governor of West Virginia, said on Tuesday that the state would give away guns and other prizes, including trucks and lifetime hunting and fishing licenses to vaccinated residents.
You give away guns? Are these the same people they're giving beer to?
Is this not the most American story ever? Like, half the country is getting free beer, and if you live in the southern states, you're getting guns and pickup trucks. I gotta say, man, I mean, I don't know. Do I really need to say what I think about giving free beer for people to get vaccinated?
Well, let me play devil's advocate. What's more important, getting people vaccinated or that they be sober?
I don't think getting a $5 coupon for free beer is going to change anyone's relationship with alcohol necessarily. But
if it changes just one person's mind, is it worth it?
Well, I mean, if it changes one person's mind, it'll change it in the direction of drinking more beer, which I don't know.
It's a false choice.
It's an incentive. Anything that promotes the irresponsible use of alcohol, in my mind, is not a good thing. But would I rather have a beer? Or I was thinking this morning, would I rather get the free beer or the free gun?
I'd like the gun.
Yeah, I'd rather have the gun than the beer. That's me.
Yeah, I guess
I'd really rather have the truck.
I'm sort of a gun supporter type of guy. I'm not taking a stand on the Second Amendment or anything right now, but I like guns. I mean, I don't love them, but I believe in, shooting as a pastime.
We still have to go to the range as a podcast.
Yeah, I think we have to. Yeah. I love to shoot at target ranges. I don't like hunting, but that's just me.
We should shoot some skeet.
Do some skeet shooting?
Yeah. I got a shotgun. We can go out to...
Do you really?
Yeah. I have a shotgun and a Mini 14 and a 30-06.
Wow.
I just keep buying guns.
Yes, you do.
I don't know why.
This is
and I identify as a lefty, too. So.
This sounds like a cry for help.
What are you going to do?
Are you okay? And that's Recovery in the News.
A little late on the trigger today. Okay,
that was a good one.
What's next?
This week in Weird. Obama offers serious take on UFOs by our favorite author, Tim Binal.
It's a double UFO episode.
I saw this and I'm like, okay, we are legitimizing this study here. Okay. In an intriguing turn of events, former President Barack Obama recently talked about the UFO phenomenon during an interview and, differing starkly from similar instances in the past, offered a serious assessment of the situation. The situation. The interesting exchange, which can be seen above, occurred this past Monday.
Seen above.
We'll
it's great for radio.
Yeah, it's perfect. Offered a serious assessment of this, which can be seen.
What are you doing?
Occurred this past Monday night. I lost my place.
Okay.
When he appeared on The Late Late Show with James Corden. During the segment, band leader Reggie Watts asked him about the simmering story surrounding Navy pilots spotting unidentified aerial phenomenon, and undoubtedly echoing the thoughts of so many people who have been following these latest events, how it might be connected to aliens. Responding to the extraterrestrial aspects of Watts' question, question, Obama initially made the obvious joke that, quote, there are some things I just can't tell you on the air, end quote. He then said that upon taking office, he actually asked if there was a, quote, lab somewhere where we're keeping the alien specimens and spaceship, end quote. This is Obama saying this,
You know what?
okay?
If I were president, that also would be one of the first questions I would ask.
And he says he was told that there wasn't one of those labs. The anecdote elicited laughs from the host and the audience, but then the former president's demeanor changed and he said, quote, but what is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there is footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they move, their trajectory. This is Obama saying this. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is. I mean, this is a former president. We're talking New York Times. We're talking Navy. I mean, this is a golden era in UFO disclosure, and I couldn't be happier.
It's stuff they can't explain. It doesn't mean it's from the extraterrestrial.
It cannot be dismissed as swamp gas. It cannot be dismissed as a Russian experimental plane, because the things they're seeing are defying the laws of physics as we know it.
None of these things ever crash.
They do crash.
So where's the stuff?
We think Area 51 and maybe S4 that are holding the stuff. Not only that,
but he said there is no place with the area with the. You think he was bullshitting?
I think that's what he was told. Okay,
that really it's the military knows all this, so we should be asking.
It's very compartmentalized, as you know. In the military, secret programs, black programs are all very compartmentalized. One hand doesn't know what the other one's doing.
This government can't keep a secret to save its life. Are you kidding me?
How about the Manhattan Project? There was 100,000 people working on that, and they kept that secret pretty damn good.
And the Russians had the plans in their hands within 5 years of the end of World War II.
Nobody talked about it. Nobody knew about it. In any case, that's This Week in Weird. Well, that about does it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com and check out our new merch page. Join the discussion on our exclusive and private Facebook group. If you need to talk, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media. Check out our show notes. Mike works very hard on them, and there are many hilarious Easter eggs to find. Listen to us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and Twitter. So tweet us at what you twit. Please go to your Apple Podcast app or iTunes and write us a 5-star review. It will be read on the air if you like it. And as we say, non proficiat perfected.
Progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good, kids.